everybody, Fred the Pirate here, and I'm here to do a review of Attack on Titan, episode 19. So obviously this review is a little bit late. So with that said, let's get on with the episode. So what happens in this week's episode is we pick up right where we left off with last week's episode where the Titan is bearing down on Eren and his group. And so Eren's getting really freaked out, and so are the other people because they don't really know what Levi's planning on doing. And so what happens is, obviously, last week's episode we cut off with Levi holding a gun, and it cuts off before he shoots it. And so essentially what happens is when Levi shoots the gun, it creates this loud piercing noise, and it's not really explained why this happens, but later on it's kind of, in the episode, it's kind of apparent what goes down. And so we'll get to that too in a second. So essentially, Eren's freaking out because he sees all these people getting killed by this Titan, and he feels really powerless and helpless because he feels like his squad and everybody in it's about to die. So he's like, he's riding on horse, and he's like, you know what, fuck this, I can turn into a Titan. Let me just fight this big bitch. And so he goes to bite his hand, and like in his the squad's like, don't do it. We need you to stay a human, because if you turn into a Titan right now, it might not end well. And it's like, you're not allowed to turn into a Titan unless you're in danger. So it's like, we need to follow the orders. And they're like, even though we don't know what the orders are, that doesn't mean that you're allowed to not follow them. And Eren's like screaming because he's like, well, I see all these motherfuckers dying for me, and it's like, I had the ability to help them, so like, why shouldn't I help them? And at this point, he cuts in and he's like, you know what, if you want to, you can turn into a Titan. Like, that's up to you. Like, he tells Eren and pretty much the whole squad, like, like, immediately I knew you were a monster. But the thing is like, I never thought you were a monster because you were a Titan. Like, you're a monster because of the way you are as a person. Like, you're somebody who you're just essentially, like, you're just a lone wolf, and you exist just for yourself, and you do whatever you want, and you don't trust people, and you can't be controlled, and that's why you're a monster. And so he tells Eren, you can turn into a Titan, but you need to make a choice about whether you're just going to depend on yourself or if you're going to depend on the Survey Corps. And you have to make the decision that you're going to regret the least, because there's pitfalls to both of those. And then in this moment, Eren's, he's got his hand up to his mouth, and he's about to bite his thumb, and then his the redhead teammate of his is like, she's like telling him, don't do it. And then it cuts to a flashback of Eren back in the training facility, and so it cuts to this moment where Hanji wants to test Eren's ability. Actually, before it does that, Levi explains to him that, when I told you the only way that we could stop you was to kill you, that wasn't actually true. Like, we do have another, like, when you become a Titan, like, we do have another way to stop you. And what we're planning on doing is that we're going to cut your body out of the Titan. And as a result of this, depending on how skilled the people are who are doing this, you'll probably end up losing most of your limbs, with the exception of your head. But he says, they'll grow back, because, you're like a lizard, and that just grows. And Eren gets really freaked out because it's like, I don't want to have my limbs cut off. And Levi's like, well, why the fuck would that be a big deal? It's like, why shouldn't you sacrifice shit? Like, why should you get to be able to turn into a cool ass Titan and do whatever the fuck we want? And we're over here standing here, risking our lives. It's like, you want to help us out, but you don't want to sacrifice anything. And so Eren comes around, and he like begrudgingly accepts that. And so then we cut to Hanji putting Levi in a dry well, and she tells him, I want you to turn into a Titan, and we're going to put you down in this well so it can contain you, and because we want to figure out how your powers work. And so um, Eren bites both of his thumbs, and it turns like they give a signal. Eren bites his thumb, but then he can't turn into a Titan, and so he feels really bad about this. They get him out of the well, and they wrap his bandages because his hands aren't healing, and he feels really shitty about this, and so he's, and his colleagues are mentioning, it's okay, and Eren says, so oddly, these people seem oddly relieved that I can't turn into a Titan, even though, it's important for me to turn into a Titan because of our mission. And so his hands are really fucked up, and he's having a hard time using a spoon, and he ends up dropping it. And because his hands hurt like a motherfucker, he ends up turning in partially into a Titan, and his hands get stuck in it. And like everyone around him, with the exception of Levi, is freaking the fuck out because they're like, "Don't move, motherfucker!" It's like, and prove to us that you're not like a monster and shit. And so, and Levi, the only one who's okay with this, and he's like, "Will you other motherfuckers calm down?" And so, and then right at this moment, Hanji sees us from far away, and she's like fangirling, and so she runs up and she tells Eren, "I want to touch her arm," and his Titan arm, and she touches it, and she burns her hands, and then she flings back, but Eren, Levi and Hanji kind of talk people down, and Eren explains like what happened, like I didn't choose to do this, and so he rips his hand away, and Hanji actually notices that his Titan hand is holding a spoon he was going after. So later, after things calm down, Eren and Hanji and everybody talking, and Hanji says, I came with a theory after she shows him the teaspoon, and she's like, I think your motives for turning into a Titan, I think it's not good enough just to hurt yourself. I think that you need to have a goal. Because every time you've turned into a Titan, you've had a goal of some kind. And so Eren says, that's true. And so, although Eren is dismayed that his goal for turning into a Titan this time was a spoon, and so Eren talks to Levi about his teammates freaking out on him, and Levi mentions, the reason why I picked the squad people I picked is because they're tough. It's because, they questioned you. And even though they acted nice to you, they were prepared to do what they needed to do, and that, they're prepared to do really ruthless things. But he said at the same time, just because they're prepared and capable of doing that, it doesn't mean that they're heartless. And Levi felt that this was an important mixture. And so, but later on, his teammates kind of apologize for that. And they tell Eren, we're sorry, we didn't trust you, but, we have your back now. And so after the flashback ends, Eren's back with the female Titan bearing down on him, and so he ultimately decides to have faith in his teammates, and he decides not to turn into a Titan. And just when that happens, his group runs past a whole bunch of motherfuckers with these grappling hook cannons, and it turns out Commander Erwin's there. So it turns out the mission all along was to lure the female Titan so they could capture the female Titan alive. And so Eren's like, whoa. And then, because he can't believe this, but then Levi gets up into his 3D maneuvering gear. He tells the rest of the people to go with it, like, put on your 3D maneuvering gear. He tells Eren, I want you to ride a bunch more further along, and then I want you to take my horse and turn into a Titan in a second. But we need you to back up a little bit. And so then he cuts to Commander Erwin, and it turns out that obviously they were going to get the Lady Titan. And so when, I think it's pretty obvious that when Levi was sounding off the gun that had the siren on it, that the whole point of doing that was to let Commander Irwin and the rest of their comrades know that they were getting close, and it's like, hey, we're on the way, and we got the Lady Titan behind us, so we'll be there in a second. So that was a pretty cool thing. And so overall, this was a really interesting episode. The actiony bits were cool. A lot more kind of emotional stuff this week, which isn't too bad. Like, I don't mind the emotional stuff when it was done well, so I enjoyed the flashbacks. I'm definitely looking forward to next week's episode. I think most of that's kind of going to be figuring out the identity of the female Titan, so that'll be really really interesting. So I'm looking forward to that. So with that said, let me guys know what your thoughts are on this week's episode, and make sure to comment, rate, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys again next time.